My son texted me, Mom, could you sell the apartment? We need $200,000 for my wife's med spa. 200,000 after months of not speaking to me, after years of being invisible. Good day, dear listeners. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you are listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled.
Good morning. I'm Eleanor Mitchell, but everyone calls me Ellie. I'm 69 years old. And let me tell you how I got here, because this story didn't start with that text. It started long before, in a kitchen that no longer felt like mine, in a life that had stopped belonging to me. I should have been used to being invisible, but somehow it still hurt. I was standing at the stove stirring a pot of chicken soup that nobody had asked me to make, while my son Nathan talked on the phone in the living room as if I were part of the furniture. His voice was loud, animated, full of that energy he never used with me. He was talking to Vanessa, his wife, about a vacation to Hawaii they were planning. $500 a night for the hotel. I had heard correctly, 500. And it had been 3 months since he'd paid me back the 200 I'd loaned him to fix his car. I turned off the burner. I dried my hands on the apron I'd had for 15 years, the one with an oil stain that never came out, and walked into the living room. Nathan didn't even look up. He kept talking, laughing, promising Vanessa that this time they would definitely get a place with an ocean view. I touched his shoulder gently. He frowned as if I'd interrupted him in the middle of life or death surgery and held up a hand to silence me. A gesture like you'd give a dog that's barking too much. I backed away. I went back to the kitchen. I poured the soup into a glass container, covered it with plastic wrap, and put it in the refrigerator. No one would eat it. I knew that, but I did it anyway, because that's what I did. Cook, clean, exist in the margins. 2 days later, my daughter Rachel arrived unannounced. She brought my 2 grandchildren, Sophie and Tyler, who ran straight into the living room and turned on the TV at full volume. Rachel walked in behind them, her phone in her hand, without even looking at me. Mom, I need you to watch them today. I have an important meeting and the babysitter canceled. It wasn't a question. It was an order. I had a doctor's appointment that afternoon, a checkup I had been putting off for months because every time I tried to go, someone needed something. But Rachel was already walking out the door, blowing me a kiss over her shoulder without turning around. "I'll leave you money for food," she shouted from outside. She left nothing. I spent the afternoon watching cartoons with Sophie and Tyler, making them ham sandwiches that they barely touched because they wanted pizza. I called the clinic to cancel my appointment. The receptionist sighed on the other end of the line as if I were just another irresponsible patient who didn't value her time. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry." Rachel returned at 8 in the evening, smelling like expensive perfume and carrying a bag from a clothing store that cost more than I earned in a month. The kids were already asleep on the couch. She woke them up in a hurry. Without thanking me, without asking how my day had been, she just said she had to go because she had yoga early the next morning. I closed the door behind her and stood in the hallway, looking at the walls of my own house as if they belonged to a stranger. Everything smelled like exhaustion, like years of not mattering, like decades of being the one who was always there, without anyone noticing that I was also fading away. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed with the light off, thinking about the last time someone had asked me how I was. Really asked. Not an automatic "how are you" while checking their phone, but a real question, looking me in the eye, waiting for an honest answer. I couldn't remember. The next morning, Nathan showed up again, this time with Vanessa. "We need to talk, Mom," he said, and something in his tone put me on alert. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had celebrated his birthdays, where I had served thousands of dinners, where I had existed in silence for so many years I had lost count. Vanessa was smiling, but it was a forced smile, the kind people use when they need something. "Mom," Nathan began, "we know you've been saving. And, well, we have an incredible opportunity, a business. Vanessa wants to open a med spa and we just need a small loan to get started." Small. The word floated in the air like an obvious lie. "How much?" I asked. $50,000. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. 50,000. My life savings. The money I had saved penny by penny. Working overtime, denying myself small pleasures, living on the bare minimum. Nathan, I don't have that kind of money, I said, and my voice sounded weaker than I wanted. He and Vanessa exchanged a look. Mom, I know you have savings. And this is an investment. We'd pay you back with interest. In 2 years? Maybe 3. Maybe never, I thought. But I didn't say it. I can't, Nathan. I'm sorry. He stood up abruptly. The chair scraped the floor with a sharp sound that made me flinch. It's always the same with you, Mom. You never support our dreams. Vanessa took his arm with that same fake smile, and they left without saying goodbye. The door shut with a solid thud that echoed through the house. I just sat there in that kitchen that no longer felt mine, staring at the cup of coffee cooling in front of me. And that's when I knew, not with words, not with a plan, just with a certainty that shot through me like silent lightning, I couldn't go on like this. I didn't want to. 3 weeks later, I got the call that would change everything. It was a Tuesday morning. I was cleaning the house as usual when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Jennifer Hayes from Human Resources. We need you to come to the main office tomorrow. It's important. My heart sped up. I had been working at the same accounting firm in Portland for 26 years, in the same small office, at the same desk by the window that overlooked the parking lot. 26 years of being invisible there, too. I thought they were going to fire me. That they had finally noticed I was 69 years old and wanted to replace me with someone younger. I arrived at the main office with sweaty palms. The building was huge, the kind with marble floors and decorative plants that looked more expensive than my car. Jennifer Hayes greeted me with a smile I couldn't interpret. Eleanor, we'd like to offer you a promotion. Regional Director of Accounting. The position is in another state, Texas, actually, but it comes with a 70% raise and a full relocation package. I was silent. The words weren't registering. Director. 70%. Another state. Texas. Me? Was all I could manage. Jennifer confirmed. We've reviewed your work over all these years. Your accuracy is flawless. You've never had a significant error, and frankly, we need someone trustworthy in that region. Austin is growing fast, and we need steady leadership there. I left that office, walking on a cloud. For the first time in decades, someone had seen me. Someone had noticed my work, my effort, my existence. I got home and wanted to share the news. I called Nathan. He didn't answer. I sent him a text. I have something important to tell you. He replied 4 hours later. Busy, Mom. Talk later. I called Rachel. She actually answered, but I heard the background noise of a restaurant. Mom, I'm at lunch. Is it urgent? I got promoted. I'm moving to another state for work. Oh, that's great. Hey, I'll call you back, okay? She hung up. I sat on the sofa in my living room looking at the walls I had painted myself 10 years ago, the furniture I had bought on sale, the photographs of my children hanging in cheap frames. Nobody asked me where I was going. Nobody asked when. Nobody asked if I needed help. That night, I made the decision. I would take the job, and I wouldn't tell them anything else. If they didn't care when I told them, then I just wouldn't tell them. The next few days were a blur. I signed contracts. I accepted the moving package. I looked for apartments online in Austin, a city I had never visited. I did it all alone, in silence, just as I had done everything in my life. Nathan showed up one afternoon, 2 days before my move. I was packing boxes in my bedroom. He walked in without knocking. Mom, did you reconsider the loan for Vanessa? I didn't look up from the box where I was packing my books. No, Nathan, I don't have that money. It's just that it's a really great opportunity. We could triple the investment in 5 years. I sealed the box with packing tape. The sound was sharp, final. I can't help you with that. He huffed, annoyed, and left the room. He didn't notice the boxes. He didn't notice I was packing up my entire life. He only saw his frustration, his need, his self-interest. The day of the move arrived with a light rain that pattered against the windows. I hired a small company, 2 young men who loaded my furniture with care, as if it were valuable, even though it wasn't. I offered them coffee and cookies. They thanked me with genuine smiles, more warmth from 2 strangers than I had received from my own family in years. I left the keys in the landlord's mailbox. I closed the door without looking back. I got into my car, an old but reliable sedan, and drove toward Austin. 9 hours on the highway through Oregon, Northern California, and into the heart of Texas. 9 hours of silence. 9 hours to think about everything I was leaving behind and everything that, just maybe, I was about to find. I arrived at dusk. The apartment the company had arranged for me was on the 12th floor of a modern building with huge windows overlooking the illuminated city. Lady Bird Lake stretched out below, the bridges lit up like strings of light. It was small but bright. It had light wood floors, a kitchen with new appliances, a balcony big enough for a chair. It was mine. Only mine. That first night, I slept on an air mattress in the middle of the empty living room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled new. I had no furniture yet, no curtains, but I had peace. A silence that didn't hurt. A silence that, for the first time in decades, felt like freedom. The next morning, I started my new job. The office was on the 23rd floor of a glass tower on Congress Avenue, with views that stretched across downtown Austin to the hills beyond. My team greeted me with respect. They called me ma'am or Director Mitchell. They asked for my opinion. They listened to me. Marcus Rodriguez, the senior accountant, helped me get settled. He was a man in his early 50s with kind brown eyes and a quick smile. "If you need anything, Mrs. Mitchell, just let me know. I know moving is complicated." "Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that." And I meant it, because someone, a complete stranger, had taken a moment to see if I was okay. The weeks passed. I bought simple furniture. A table. A gray sofa. A floor lamp that gave off warm light. I turned the balcony into my favorite spot. Every morning, I drank my coffee out there, watching the city wake up, feeling the cool air on my face before the Texas heat settled in. Nobody from my family called. Not once. I sent a group text to Nathan and Rachel, telling them I was settled, that everything had gone well. Nathan replied with a thumbs up emoji. Rachel didn't reply at all. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Maybe because I wasn't expecting anything anymore. Or maybe because I was finally learning that existing for others was not the same as existing for myself. And for the first time in my life, I was existing for me. The work fulfilled me in a strange way. Every report I reviewed, every decision I made, every meeting where my voice mattered, it reminded me that I was more than just a forgotten mother. I was a professional. I was competent. I was respected. Marcus became something of a friend. We had lunch together on Fridays at a small Korean restaurant on South Lamar called Corriente. He told me about his daughter studying engineering at Texas A&M, about his passion for vintage cars, about his amicable divorce 5 years ago. I told him very little. I still didn't know how to explain that I had disappeared from my children's lives without them even noticing. One Saturday afternoon, while I was organizing some files in my apartment, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I almost never expected anyone. I opened the door, and there was Linda, my younger sister, with a small suitcase and that mischievous smile she'd always had. "Surprise," she said, and hugged me tightly. "Linda, what are you doing here?" "I came to visit you." "Did you think you were going to escape without me coming to see your new life?" "Besides, I had a few days off and wanted to see Austin." Linda had always been different. 4 years younger than me, divorced, no kids, living her life with a freedom I had never allowed myself. She worked as a freelance graphic designer and traveled constantly. We were close, but we didn't see each other often. She knew about my move because I had told her on the phone, and unlike my children, she had asked questions. Lots of questions. We entered the apartment, and Linda let out a long whistle. "Ellie, this is beautiful. Look at these windows. Look at that view." She walked straight to the balcony and stood there, gazing at Lady Bird Lake spread out before us, the bridges connecting the two sides of the city. The afternoon sun gilded the water. "You have to let me take pictures. This is incredible." We spent the weekend together. I showed her my office, took her to the places I had discovered, the French bakery on West Lynn, where I bought croissants on Sundays, Zilker Park, where I walked in the afternoons, the farmer's market at the Triangle, where they sold fresh flowers. Linda took pictures of everything, of the city, of the food, of me smiling in front of a colorful mural downtown. "You look different," she told me on Sunday morning as we had breakfast on the balcony. You look lighter. I feel different. I admitted. Do Nathan and Rachel know what your life is like now? I shook my head. They haven't asked. Linda frowned, but didn't say anything else. She knew the history. She knew how they had treated me for years. She herself had witnessed many of those silent humiliations. On Sunday afternoon, before she left for the airport, Linda insisted on taking one last photo. I stood on the balcony with the city in the background, the wind blowing my hair, a coffee cup in my hand. I felt ridiculous posing like that, but she insisted. Someday you're going to want to remember this moment, she said. The moment you started living for you. I drove her to the airport and we said goodbye with a long hug. Take care of yourself, big sister, she whispered. And don't let anyone steal this piece from you. That night, as I was making dinner, just a simple salad and grilled chicken, perfectly portioned. For one, my phone started ringing off the hook. Texts, notifications, missed calls, all from Nathan and Rachel. I felt a shiver run down my spine. In 3 months, they hadn't shown any signs of life, and now this. I opened my messages. Nathan had written, "Mom, where are you? Call me, it's urgent." Rachel, "Mom, I need to talk to you. It's important." More messages, more urgency, more sudden need for my existence. Then I saw Linda's Instagram post. She had tagged me. The photo from the balcony, me smiling, relaxed, with the city behind me like a postcard. The caption read, "Visiting my big sister in her new apartment in Austin. So proud of you, Ellie. You deserve it all." The comments were multiplying. Acquaintances from years ago asking where I was, congratulating me, surprised. And surely Nathan and Rachel had seen it. Not because they followed my life, but because Linda had many mutual contacts with them. I took a deep breath. I didn't answer the messages. I turned off my phone and finished making my dinner in silence. The next morning, I turned on my phone on the way to work. 20 more messages. Now, Vanessa was texting too. And what they were saying was starting to take shape. "Nathan, Mom, I saw your new apartment. It looks incredible. Can we talk?" Rachel, "Mom, why didn't you tell us you moved to a place like that? I'd love to visit." Vanessa, "Mom-in-law, congratulations on your new home. Nathan told me about it, and I'd love to chat with you about an idea." An idea? Of course. Marcus noticed my tense face during the morning meeting. "Are you okay, Mrs. Mitchell?" he asked later when the others had left. "Family problems," I said, and I was surprised how easy it was to admit it. "If you need to talk, I'm here." "Thank you, Marcus. I really appreciate that." That afternoon, I finally replied. A simple message to each of them. "I'm fine. I've been busy with work. We'll talk soon." But they didn't wait. Nathan called immediately. I let it ring. He called again and again. I finally answered. "Mom, why didn't you tell us you moved to such an elegant place? That building looks so expensive." "It's the apartment the company got for me, Nathan. It comes with the relocation package." A white lie. I had chosen it. I paid part of the rent difference with my new salary, but I didn't owe him an explanation. "Look, Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. Vanessa and I are still moving forward with the med spa plan, and we saw your apartment. If you could sell it or maybe take out a loan against it." "Nathan, this apartment isn't mine. It's a rental." Silence on the other end. "A rental?" "Yes, but you look so well off in the photos." I thought, "You thought what, Nathan? You thought I was suddenly rich and could solve all your problems?" "That's not it, Mom. It's just that Vanessa really needs this money. Her dream is that clinic. And you're her mother-in-law. Family helps family." Family. I repeated the word, and it sounded hollow in my mouth. "Nathan, you didn't call me once in 3 months. Not once. You didn't ask how I was. You didn't ask if I needed help with the move. You didn't ask anything. And now that you saw a picture of a nice apartment, suddenly I'm family?" "Mom, it's not fair that..." "No, Nathan. What's not fair is that I only exist for you when you need something." And I hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But it wasn't fear. It was power. It was clarity. It was the truth finally spoken out loud. Rachel called minutes later. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I listened to it. "Mom, I don't know what Nathan told you, but I just wanted to visit." And, well, Kyle and I are looking to buy a house. We thought maybe you could help us with the down payment. It's not much, just $30,000. $30,000. Not much. To them, it was never much because it wasn't their money. It was mine. The money I had earned with decades of work. The money I had saved by denying myself everything. The money that now, finally, was just mine. I turned off my phone again. I poured myself a glass of wine. I went out onto the balcony and sat in my chair, watching the city lights turn on one by one like earthbound stars. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not a sad smile, not a resigned smile, but the smile of someone who finally understood that her life belonged to her. The following days were a silent battle. Nathan called 3-4 times a day. Rachel sent long messages full of justifications. Vanessa even sent me a 15-minute audio message explaining her life's project and how I could be part of something big, as if my participation was anything other than my money. I continued to ignore them. I went to work. I did my routine. I lived my life. But they didn't give up. They had found my new number, my new address through Linda, and now they wanted to enter my new life with the same old attitude, taking without asking, demanding without giving. One afternoon, Marcus and I were reviewing some quarterly reports when my phone vibrated again. He noticed my expression. "Excuse me for prying, Mrs. Mitchell, but you've had that look on your face for days. Are you sure you don't want to talk about it?" I was quiet for a moment. Then, without really knowing why, I told him everything. I told him about the years of being invisible, about the move nobody noticed, about Linda's photo, about the desperate messages asking for money. It all came out like a river that had been dammed for too long. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took off his glasses and cleaned them with his handkerchief, like he always did when he was thinking. "Can I tell you something without it sounding disrespectful?" "Go ahead." "You don't owe them anything. Absolutely nothing. Being a mother doesn't mean being a bank. Being family doesn't mean letting them use you." "I know," I said, but my voice sounded less convinced than I wanted. "Do you?" "Because from what you're telling me, they still believe they can pressure you, and they will keep doing it until you set a real boundary." He was right. I was avoiding, postponing, hoping they would get tired. But people like Nathan and Rachel don't get tired. They just get more insistent. That night, sitting on my balcony with a blanket over my legs, because the October air was starting to get cool, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep running. I wasn't going to stay in this limbo. If they wanted answers, they would get them, but they would be my answers, on my terms. I thought about someone Linda had mentioned once, a lawyer who had helped a friend with an estate dispute, Patricia Caldwell. Pat. She'd been an estate attorney in Austin for 25 years. Linda had said she was tough, fair, and didn't take anyone's nonsense. I needed that. The next morning, I looked up her office. Caldwell Estate Law, on 6th Street near downtown. I called and made an appointment for that afternoon. The receptionist fit me in at 3 o'clock. Pat Caldwell's office was nothing like I expected. It was warm, with dark wood furniture, comfortable chairs, and bookshelves lined with legal texts and framed photographs. Pat herself was in her late 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, sharp green eyes, and a no-nonsense manner that put me at ease immediately. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Please, sit down. Tell me what brings you here." I sat in the leather chair across from her desk and took a breath. "I need to protect my assets from my children." She didn't blink, didn't look surprised, just nodded and picked up a legal pad. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the 26 years of work, the 70% raise, the move to Austin that nobody noticed, Linda's Instagram photo, the explosion of demands, Nathan's $50,000, then $200,000, Rachel's $30,000. The years of being invisible until they thought I had money. Pat took notes in a precise, efficient hand. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Mitchell, let me be very clear. What you're describing is financial and you have every legal right to protect yourself." "I'm not sure I want to cut them off completely," I said. "Especially Rachel. She might be different." You don't have to cut them off, Pat said, but you do need to establish legal boundaries. I'm going to recommend something called an irrevocable charitable trust. You transfer your assets into a foundation, one that benefits a cause you care about. The assets are no longer yours to give away, even if you wanted to. They're protected. A foundation? Yes. Many of my clients in similar situations do this. It removes you from the equation. When your children ask for money, you can honestly say, I don't have it. It belongs to the foundation now. I thought about that. A foundation. Helping others who had been where I was, invisible, exploited, forgotten. What would happen to the money after I die? It continues to fund the foundation's mission in perpetuity. You can name a board of trustees to oversee it. You can even leave a small inheritance to your children if you choose, say, a symbolic amount. But the bulk of your estate would be protected and used for good. How much are we talking about? I asked. How much in assets do you have? About $320,000 in savings? My pension. That's it. Pat nodded. That's more than enough to establish a meaningful foundation. And frankly, it's exactly the kind of amount adult children tend to go after when they know it exists. I sat back in the chair, processing. If I do this, they're going to be furious. Probably, Pat said calmly. But let me ask you something, Mrs. Mitchell. Are they kind to you when you say no? Or are they already furious? She was right. Nathan had already been angry when I refused the $50,000. Rachel's messages had been passive-aggressive and guilt-laden. The anger was already there. I was just finally acknowledging it. What do I need to do? I asked. First, we draft the trust documents. We establish the foundation's mission, let's say, supporting elderly individuals facing financial exploitation by family members. We transfer your assets into the trust. Then we file everything with the state of Texas. Once it's done, it's irrevocable. You can't change your mind, and neither can anyone else. How long does it take? 2 weeks, maybe 3 if we move quickly. I looked out the window at the Austin skyline. The buildings gleamed in the afternoon sun. Somewhere down there, my children were living their lives, completely unaware that I was about to make a decision that would change everything. Let's do it, I said. Pat smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. Good, I was hoping you'd say that. She opened her laptop and began typing. Now, let's talk about the name of your foundation. Do you have any ideas? I thought for a moment. About the life I'd left behind in Portland. About the woman I'd been invisible, exhausted, fading. And about the woman I was becoming visible, rested, whole. Second chance, I said. The Second Chance Foundation. Pat looked up from her laptop. Her eyes were warm. That's perfect, Mrs. Mitchell. That's absolutely perfect. Over the next 2 weeks, I met with Pat 3 more times. We drafted the mission statement for the Second Chance Foundation to provide financial assistance, housing support, and legal advocacy for elderly individuals aged 65 and older who have experienced financial exploitation or abandonment by family members. We established a board of trustees, Pat herself, a retired social worker named Grace Martinez, whom Pat recommended, and myself as founder. We opened a bank account in the foundation's name. And on a Tuesday afternoon in late October, I transferred $320,000 from my personal savings into the foundation's account. I watched the numbers on the screen change. My life savings, gone from my personal account, protected, irrevocable. I felt a rush of emotion. Fear, relief, sadness, liberation all at once. How do you feel? Pat asked. Light, I said. I feel light. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and allowed myself to process what I'd done. The money was gone, but not lost. It would help people. It would matter. And it was no longer something my children could take from me, because it was no longer mine to give. The next morning, Nathan called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was terse. Mom, we need to talk. This has gone on long enough. Call me back. I didn't. That afternoon, Rachel showed up at my building. The doorman called up. Mrs. Mitchell, there's a Rachel Barnes here to see you. Should I send her up? My heart clenched. Rachel, here, in Austin. Give me a moment, I said. I could refuse to see her. I could tell the doorman to send her away. But part of me, the part that remembered holding her as a baby, teaching her to read, braiding her hair, wanted to give her a chance. Send her up, I said. 3 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it. Rachel stood there with red-rimmed eyes, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exhausted. She looked, for the first time in years, real. "Mom," she said, and her voice broke. I stepped aside. "Come in." She walked into my apartment slowly, looking around at the clean, minimal furniture, at the view of Lady Bird Lake, at the life I'd built without her. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "Thank you." We sat on the sofa. The silence stretched between us, uncomfortable but not hostile. "Why are you here, Rachel?" I asked. "Because I miss you," she said, and tears started rolling down her cheeks. "Because Nathan told me what you said to him on the phone. Because I've been thinking about how we treated you, and I'm ashamed, Mom. I'm so ashamed." I didn't say anything. I waited. "Kyle and I had a fight last week," she continued. "About you. About the house. He said we should just ask you for the money, that you're our mother, and you're supposed to help." And I realized I've been doing that my whole life. Asking you for things, taking from you, never giving anything back. "Why are you here, Rachel?" I asked again, more gently this time. She looked at me with swollen eyes. "I came to apologize, not to ask for money, not to guilt you into anything, just to say I'm sorry, and to ask." Her voice broke again. "To ask if there's a way we can start over. Not the way things were, but something new, something better." I felt something crack open in my chest. Not hope exactly, but possibility. "Rachel, I need to tell you something," I said. "And I need you to listen without interrupting." She nodded. 2 weeks ago, I transferred all my savings, $320,000, into a charitable foundation. It's called the Second Chance Foundation. It helps elderly people who have been exploited by their families. The money is gone. It's not mine anymore. Even if I wanted to give it to you, I couldn't. Rachel's face went pale. "All of it?" "All of it. But what about when you..." She stopped herself. "When I die?" I finished. "The foundation continues. I've left you and Nathan each a symbolic inheritance of $1,000. The rest goes to the cause." She stared at me, processing. I braced myself for anger, for accusations, for tears of a different kind. Instead, she started laughing. Not hysterical laughter. Quiet, sad, self-aware laughter. $1,000, she said. After a lifetime of... She stopped. "You know what? Good. Good for you, Mom. I mean it." I looked at her, searching for sarcasm. There was none. "You mean that?" "I do," she said. "Because if I'd been you, I would have done the same thing. Maybe sooner." She wiped her eyes. "I'm not here for the money, Mom. I'm really not. Kyle doesn't even know I came. I wanted to see you. To tell you I'm sorry. And to ask if we can try again. Slowly. No expectations. Just two people trying to know each other." I felt tears prick my own eyes. I'd like that, Rachel. I really would. We sat there on my gray sofa, mother and daughter, with 320,000 reasons why this shouldn't work and one fragile, genuine reason why it might. Rachel and I spent 2 hours together that afternoon. We talked about small things at first: Sophie's school play, Tyler's obsession with dinosaurs, the Austin weather compared to Portland. Then, slowly, we talked about harder things. "I think I learned it from Nathan," Rachel said at one point. "The way he talked about you after you refused the loan, like you were being selfish, like you owed us." And I just went along with it because it was easier than questioning it. "Nathan is angry," I said carefully. "He's been angry for a long time. I don't think it's really about the money. What is it about? Control, maybe? Or the idea that I'm supposed to exist for him? I don't know, Rachel, but it's his work to figure out, not mine." Before she left, Rachel hugged me tightly. "Can I come back? In a few weeks, maybe? Just to visit. No agenda." "I'd like that," I said. "Thank you, Mom, for giving me a chance." and for doing what you did with the money. I think it's brave. I closed the door behind her and stood in my apartment, feeling something unfamiliar. Not peace yet, but the beginning of it. 2 days later, Nathan called. This time, I answered. Mom, what the hell did you do? His voice was hard, furious, barely controlled. Hello, Nathan. What are you talking about? Rachel told me about the foundation, about the money. Is it true? I took a breath. Yes, it's true. You gave away $320,000 to strangers? To people you don't even know? I didn't give it away. I established a foundation to help elderly people who... I don't care what you call it, Mom. You threw away our inheritance. Money that was supposed to be for your family, for your grandchildren, for your med spa? I interrupted. For Rachel's house? For the vacations and the designer purses and the $500 hotel rooms? Silence on the other end. Nathan, that money was mine. I earned it, I saved it, and I chose to use it for something that matters to me. We matter to you, he said, and his voice cracked. Or we're supposed to. But apparently we don't. Apparently strangers matter more than your own son. That's not true. Then prove it. Come back to Portland. Let's sit down with a lawyer. A real lawyer. Not whoever convinced you to do this, and reverse it. Foundations can be dissolved. Money can be recovered. We can fix this. I'm not going to fix it, Nathan. There's nothing to fix. This is my decision, and it's final. You're making a huge mistake, Mom. Vanessa and I were struggling. Really struggling. Her mother is sick. We need help. And you're sitting there in your fancy apartment acting like we don't exist. I closed my eyes. There it was. The manipulation, the guilt, the attempt to make me responsible for problems that weren't mine to solve. Nathan, I'm sorry Vanessa's mother is sick. I truly am, but that is not my burden to carry. You're a 42-year-old man with a job and a wife. You'll figure it out, just like everyone else does. Unbelievable, he spat. You've changed, Mom, and not in a good way. You're right, I said calmly. I have changed. I've learned to choose myself, and I'm not apologizing for that. He hung up without saying goodbye. I set the phone down and walked to the balcony. The sun was setting over Lady Bird Lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from release, from finally speaking the truth and not backing down. Marcus called that evening. We'd made plans to see a movie, but I'd texted him earlier to cancel. You okay? He asked. I had a confrontation with my son. And I held my ground. Good, he said simply. That's really good, Eleanor. I'm proud of you. His words, simple and genuine, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Marcus. Do you want company? I can bring takeout. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. Actually, I said, I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. An hour later, Marcus showed up with Thai food and a bottle of wine. We sat on my balcony, eating pad Thai and spring rolls, watching the city lights flicker to life. Can I ask you something? Marcus said after a while. Of course. Do you regret it? What you did with the foundation? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said, I don't. For the first time in my life, I did something that was completely mine. Not for my kids, not for anyone's approval, just for me, and for people who needed it. I don't regret that. He raised his wine glass. To doing things that are completely yours. I clinked my glass against his. To choosing yourself. We sat in comfortable silence after that, and I realized something important. I had built this, not just the financial boundaries, not just the foundation, but this life, this friendship, this peace. And no one, not even Nathan's anger or guilt trips, could take it away from me. The following Monday, I received a certified letter at my office. It was from a law firm in Portland. Nathan and Vanessa had retained an attorney. They were formally contesting the foundation, claiming I had been coerced or was mentally incompetent when I established it. I called Pat immediately. Let them try, she said, her voice calm and unbothered. We have documentation of your mental competency. We have your signed affidavits. We have witnesses. They have nothing but anger and entitlement. This won't go anywhere, Eleanor. Trust me. Should I be worried? Not even a little bit. But it does tell us something important. What? They're not going to stop. And you need to be ready for that. Pat's words proved prophetic. 2 weeks later, Nathan and Vanessa showed up in Austin. They didn't call ahead. They simply appeared at my building on a Saturday morning. The doorman called up, his voice apologetic. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry to disturb you. There's a Nathan Mitchell and Vanessa Mitchell here. They're quite insistent on seeing you. They say it's urgent." I looked at the clock. 9:30 in the morning. I was still in my bathrobe, drinking coffee on the balcony. "Tell them I'll be down in 15 minutes. There's a coffee shop on the corner. They can wait for me there." I wasn't going to let them into my apartment. Not this time. This was my sanctuary, and I was protecting it. I dressed carefully. Jeans. A simple blue sweater. Comfortable shoes. I pulled my hair back. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I was proud of, a woman who knew her worth. The coffee shop was called Joe's, a local favorite with outdoor seating and strong coffee. Nathan and Vanessa were sitting at a corner table. Vanessa looked immaculate, as always. Perfect hair, designer sunglasses, a white blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Nathan looked tired, his face drawn, his jaw tight. I sat down across from them without ordering anything. "You came all this way?" I said. "So talk." Nathan leaned forward. "Mom, we need you to drop this foundation thing. It's not too late. Pat Caldwell told our lawyer that you can dissolve it if you choose to. You just have to sign the paperwork. I'm not dissolving it." Vanessa took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, whether from crying or lack of sleep, I couldn't tell. "Mrs. Mitchell, my mother has stage 3 cancer. The treatments are bankrupting us. We've maxed out our credit cards. We've taken out a second mortgage. We need help, and you're the only family we have." I felt a pang of sympathy. I'm not made of stone. But sympathy and responsibility are two different things. I'm sorry about your mother, Vanessa. Truly. But that doesn't change the fact that the money is no longer mine to give. Even if I wanted to, I can't access it. That's the point of an irrevocable trust. "You did this on purpose," Nathan said, his voice rising. "You set this up to punish us, to make us suffer." "I set this up to protect myself," I said calmly, "from exactly this. From being asked to solve problems that aren't mine to solve." "We're your family," Vanessa said. And now her voice was sharp, the professional mask slipping. "You're supposed to help your family. That's what family does. Family also calls when you move states," I said. "Family notices when you're gone for 3 months. Family doesn't ignore you until they see a picture of a nice apartment and suddenly remember you exist." Nathan stood up abruptly. The metal chair scraped against the concrete with a harsh sound. People at nearby tables turned to look. "You know what, Mom? You're right. I didn't call. I didn't visit. I took you for granted. I'm sorry. Is that what you want to hear? Will that change your mind?" "No," I said. "Because apologies don't mean anything when they're just a strategy to get what you want." Vanessa stood too. "You're a cruel woman, Mrs. Mitchell. A cruel, selfish woman. Your husband would be ashamed of you." The mention of Robert, my husband, who had died 12 years ago, who Nathan and Vanessa had barely known, hit something in me. Not anger. Something colder. "My husband would be proud of me," I said quietly, "because he always wanted me to stand up for myself. He told me that before he died, and I finally am." "This isn't over," Nathan said. "We're going to fight this. Legally. Publicly if we have to. Everyone is going to know what kind of mother you are." "Then let them know," I said. "I'm not afraid of the truth anymore." I stood up, leaving them standing there in the morning sunlight, furious and powerless. I walked back to my building without looking back. The doorman held the door for me. "Are you all right, Mrs. Mitchell?" "I'm fine, Henry. Thank you." I took the elevator to the 12th floor. I walked into my apartment and locked the door behind me. I went to the balcony and sat in my chair, looking out at the lake, at the city, at the life I had built. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Nathan just called me. He's furious. Are you okay?" I replied, "I'm okay. Better than okay." Another text, this one from Marcus. "Still on for brunch at 11? Absolutely, I replied. I finished my coffee. I showered. I put on a dress I liked, one I'd bought the week before just because it made me feel good. I walked to the restaurant where Marcus was already waiting, and we had brunch migas and fresh orange juice and conversation that had nothing to do with family drama. And when I got home that afternoon, I found an email from Pat. Eleanor Nathan's attorney has withdrawn the competency challenge. They have no case, and they know it. You're clear. The foundation is secure. Well done. I read that email 3 times. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, went to my balcony, and watched the sunset paint the sky in colors I'd never taken the time to notice before. I was free. Truly, finally free. The weeks after that confrontation were some of the quietest of my life. Not the heavy silence of invisibility, but the peaceful silence of a life lived on my own terms. Nathan didn't contact me again. I heard through Rachel that he and Vanessa had moved to a smaller apartment, that Vanessa had taken a job with better health insurance to cover her mother's treatments, that they were managing, struggling, but managing, which is what adults do. Rachel called every Sunday, short calls at first 10, 15 minutes. How was your week? Did you try that restaurant I told you about? Small steps, careful rebuilding. On one of those calls, she told me something that surprised me. I started therapy, Mom. You did? Yeah. Kyle suggested it after everything that happened. He said I had issues with boundaries and asking for help in healthy ways. He was right. She paused. My therapist says I learned some unhealthy patterns from my relationship with you. Not your fault, she added quickly, but patterns we both participated in. Me taking, you giving without limits. Both of us pretending that was love. That's very mature of you, Rachel, I said, and I meant it. I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying. I know you are, honey, and I'm proud of you. Marcus suggested I talk to someone too, not because I was broken, but because processing decades of family dynamics wasn't something anyone should do alone. I found Dr. Sarah Brennan through my health insurance network. She was a family therapist in her early 50s with a warm smile and an office filled with plants and comfortable chairs. In our first session, I told her everything, the years of invisibility, the move, the foundation, the confrontation with Nathan. When I finished, she leaned back and looked at me with kind eyes. Eleanor, do you know what I hear when you tell me this story? What? I hear a woman who finally decided to live, who had the courage to break destructive patterns, who chose her own well-being over guilt. That's not selfishness. That's emotional survival. Then why do I still feel guilty sometimes, I asked. Because guilt is a conditioned emotion. You spent decades being conditioned to feel responsible for everyone else's happiness. That doesn't just disappear overnight. But with work, that guilt can transform into something healthier, appropriate responsibility. What does that mean? It means being responsible for your own actions and emotions, not for the actions and emotions of others. It means understanding that you can love your children without sacrificing yourself into non-existence. Those words, sacrificing yourself into non-existence, stayed with me. That's exactly what I had been doing. Erasing myself so everyone else could have more space. Over the next few months, therapy became a cornerstone of my new life. I went every Thursday at 4 o'clock. Dr. Brennan helped me see patterns I'd never noticed, how I apologized for things that weren't my fault, how I minimized my own needs, how I'd been taught that a good mother was an invisible one. Your children didn't learn to use you, she said in one session. You taught them by always saying yes, by never having boundaries, by making your love conditional on their comfort. That was hard to hear, but it was true. Meanwhile, my life in Austin was blooming in ways I'd never imagined. Marcus and I had become close friends. We went hiking one Saturday at Mount Bonnell, climbing the stairs to the summit and looking out over the city. The view took my breath away. The Colorado River winding through the hills, the city spread out like a promise. You know what I love about Austin? Marcus said as we sat on the stone wall at the top. What? It lets you reinvent yourself. Nobody cares who you were before you got here. They only care who you are now. I like who I am now, I said. So do I, Eleanor. So do I. I joined a book club at the local library. 8 women of different ages who met twice a month to discuss books and, inevitably, our lives. I told them my story one evening after we'd finished discussing a novel about family dysfunction. I cut off my son financially, one woman named Diane said. 10 years ago. Best decision I ever made. He hasn't spoken to me since, but I have peace. And peace is worth more than approval. 3 other women nodded in agreement. I wasn't alone. This pattern adult children exploiting aging parents was common. Too common. That's when I realized the Second Chance Foundation wasn't just about protecting my money. It was about giving other people what I'd finally given myself permission to choose peace over guilt. The foundation's first recipient was a 72-year-old woman named Betty, whose children had convinced her to sell her house and move in with them, then systematically drained her bank account and kicked her out. The foundation paid for her first 6 months of rent in a senior apartment community. Pat called to tell me about it. She cried when we told her. Eleanor, she said she thought she'd be homeless. Your money gave her hope. I hung up the phone and sat on my balcony, watching the evening light fade over the water, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not the purpose of serving others at my own expense, but the purpose of helping others while also helping myself. The kind of purpose that lasts. 3 months after the confrontation with Nathan, Rachel asked if she could visit again, this time with Kyle and the kids. I want them to see your life, Mom, she said on the phone. I want them to know their grandmother, not as someone who just gives them things, but as a person. Is that okay? I'd like that very much, I said. They came on a Saturday in March. The weather was perfect, 75 degrees, bright sun, a light breeze off the lake. I'd prepared simple snacks and had juice boxes for Sophie and Tyler. When they arrived, Sophie ran to me and hugged my legs. Grandma, you live so high up. Tyler, more cautious, hung back near Kyle until I knelt down to his level. Hey, buddy, want to see the balcony? You can see boats on the water. His face lit up. Really? We spent the afternoon on the balcony and in the park. Kyle was kind, respectful, asking me about my work, and genuinely listening to the answers. Rachel watched us with something like relief in her eyes, as if she'd been afraid this reunion would be stiff or painful, and was grateful it wasn't. At one point, while Kyle took the kids to the playground, Rachel and I sat on a bench under a massive oak tree. Thank you for this, Mom, she said. For what? For not shutting me out. For giving me a chance to do better. We're both doing better, I said. It's not just you. Therapy is helping, she said. I'm learning to ask for help without demanding it. To accept no without making it personal. It's hard, but... She smiled. It's worth it. I'm learning too, I admitted. Learning that setting boundaries doesn't make me a bad mother. It makes me a healthy person. You were never a bad mother, Rachel said softly. You were too good a mother. You gave us everything, and we took it all without ever thinking about what it cost you. I took her hand. We're here now. That's what matters. Before they left, Rachel gave me a framed photo. It was from that afternoon, me kneeling on the balcony next to Tyler, both of us pointing at a sailboat on the lake, smiles on our faces. I want you to remember this moment, Rachel said. The moment we started getting to know each other for real. After they left, I put the photo on my bookshelf next to the one Linda had taken of me when she visited. 2 versions of myself alone but content, and surrounded by family I was choosing to let in on my terms. Both were true. Both were me. I didn't hear from Nathan. Not on my birthday in April. Not on Mother's Day in May. Rachel called both times, and we had good conversations, but Nathan's silence was absolute. He's embarrassed, Rachel told me once. Vanessa's mother recovered, by the way. The cancer went into remission. They figured it out without your money. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it. Are you sad about Nathan? I thought about it. Yes, but I'm also at peace with it. I can't force him to grow or to see me differently. That's his choice. You've changed so much, Mom. I had to. The old version of me was disappearing. By the time summer arrived, my life had settled into a rhythm I loved. Work during the week, challenging, engaging, fulfilling. Lunches with Marcus. Thursday therapy sessions. Book club twice a month. Weekend hikes or visits to the farmer's market. And every few weeks, a call from Rachel. Sometimes a visit, building something slowly, carefully, with intention. The Second Chance Foundation had helped 4 people by then. Betty, the first recipient, a 70-year-old man whose children had forged his signature on a reverse mortgage. An 83-year-old woman whose caregiver had been stealing her Social Security checks. A 67-year-old widower left homeless after his daughter emptied his savings. Each story broke my heart and validated my decision. This was what the money was for. Not for med spas or down payments or vacations. For survival. For dignity. For second chances. Pat called me one afternoon with news. Eleanor, we've been contacted by a local TV station. They want to do a story about the foundation. About you. About me? About what you did. How you turned a difficult family situation into something that helps others. Are you interested? I thought about it. About being visible in a way I'd never been before. Not as a mother, not as an employee, but as Eleanor Mitchell founder, advocate, survivor. Yes, I said. I'm interested. Because my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever been made to feel invisible by the people who were supposed to see them most clearly. And if telling it helped even one person find the courage to choose themselves, then it was worth being seen. The TV interview aired on a Tuesday evening in late June. I watched it at home with Marcus, who had insisted on being there for moral support. The reporter, a woman in her 40s named Jennifer Chen, had been kind during the filming. She'd asked thoughtful questions, not sensational ones. The segment was called Second Chances, One Woman's Stand Against Family Financial Abuse. They showed footage of me on my balcony, talking about the years of invisibility. They showed Pat discussing the legal framework of irrevocable trusts. They interviewed Betty, the first foundation recipient, who cried as she described what the assistance had meant to her. And they showed me saying the words I'd finally learned to believe. Loving your children doesn't mean destroying yourself for them. You can be a good mother and still choose yourself. Those two things aren't opposites. When the segment ended, my phone started buzzing. Texts from Rachel. Mom, I'm so proud of you. From Linda. That's my sister. From coworkers I barely knew. You're so brave. But the most surprising message came from an unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Sophie. Rachel, let me watch the interview. You're really cool, Grandma. I'm proud of you too. I stared at that message for a long time. Sophie, my 8-year-old granddaughter, telling me she was proud of me. Not for giving her things. Not for babysitting. For being myself. I replied, "Thank you, sweetheart. That means the world to me." Within a week, the foundation received 27 applications for assistance. Pat and Grace, the other board member, met with me to discuss how to handle the sudden demand. "We're going to need more funding," Pat said. "Your initial gift is wonderful, but if we want to help this many people, we need donors." "Let's start a fundraising campaign," Grace suggested. "Use the publicity from the interview, set up a website, make it easy for people to contribute." Within a month, the Second Chance Foundation had raised an additional $80,000 from donors across the country. People who had experienced similar situations. People who wanted to help. People who understood that family exploitation was real and needed to be addressed. We hired a part-time coordinator. We established clear criteria for assistance. We created a network of volunteer attorneys willing to help recipients navigate legal issues. The foundation wasn't just mine anymore. It had become something bigger, a movement, almost. Marcus and I celebrated over dinner at a restaurant overlooking the lake. He raised his glass of wine. To Eleanor Mitchell, accidental activist. I laughed. "I'm not an activist." "You are, though. You're changing how people think about family obligations and elder abuse." "That's activism, whether you planned it or not." "I just wanted peace," I said. "And you got it. But you also gave it to other people. That's pretty remarkable." I looked out at the water, at the lights reflecting off the surface, at the city I'd made my home. "You know what's strange, Marcus?" "What?" "I'm happier now than I've ever been. And I'm alone most of the time. How does that work?" He smiled. "You're not alone. You have people who genuinely care about you. The difference is they don't need you, they just want you. That's what real relationships look like." He was right. Rachel wanted a relationship with me, not my money. Linda visited because she enjoyed my company. Marcus had lunch with me because he liked talking to me. The book club women valued my opinions. I was surrounded by people, but none of them were taking from me. They were just being with me, and that made all the difference. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Mom. Nathan's voice. Quiet. Hesitant. I saw the interview. My heart stopped. Nathan, I don't know what to say, except that you were right. About all of it, and I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because I want anything, he added quickly. Just because you deserved an apology a long time ago? I sat down on the edge of my bed, phone pressed to my ear, hardly daring to breathe. Thank you, I whispered. Can we maybe talk sometime? Not now. I'm not ready. But someday? Yes, I said. Someday. When you're ready. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, tears of hope. The fragile, uncertain kind that comes when you realize that endings can sometimes be beginnings too. 1 year after that phone call from Nathan, I sat on my balcony on a Sunday morning in June, watching the sun rise over Lady Bird Lake. The city was still quiet, the heat of the Texas summer not yet settled in. My coffee steamed in the cool morning air. I was 70 years old now. A milestone I'd once feared, imagining it would mean irrelevance, invisibility, decline. Instead, it meant clarity, freedom, purpose. The Second Chance Foundation had helped 32 people in the past year. We'd raised over $200,000 in donations. We'd been featured in 3 more news segments and a national magazine article. Pat, Grace, and I had hired a full-time director, a former social worker named Michael, who brought energy and expertise we desperately needed. I still worked 3 days a week now, with the company's blessing. I'd trained my replacement as regional director, a sharp woman in her 40s named Jennifer, who reminded me of myself 30 years ago. Capable, underestimated, ready. Marcus and I had traveled together a week in Santa Fe, visiting galleries and hiking in the high desert. Not romance, something better. Deep, uncomplicated friendship. Rachel and I talked weekly. She'd visited 4 times in the past year, twice with the kids, twice alone. We'd had real conversations about her marriage, her therapy, her dreams, my life. She'd stopped asking for things and started asking about things. The difference was everything. And Nathan. Nathan and I had met 3 months ago, on a Saturday afternoon at a coffee shop halfway between Austin and San Antonio, where he and Vanessa had settled. It had been awkward at first. Stilted. 2 people who looked alike but didn't quite know each other anymore. I've been in therapy, he'd said, for 6 months now, dealing with a lot of things, control issues, entitlement, the belief that I was owed things I never earned. He'd looked at me with clear eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mom. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking if someday we might be able to start over. Small, no expectations. I'd like that, I'd said. We'd talked for an hour about his life, his marriage, his struggles, about my life too, the foundation, my work, my friends. He'd listened in a way he never had before, really listened. As we'd said goodbye in the parking lot, he'd hugged me. A real hug. Not performative, not transactional, just a hug. I'm proud of what you did, Mom, he'd said. It took me a long time to see it, but I am. You saved yourself, and you helped a lot of other people in the process. We'd seen each other twice since then. Coffee again. Then a lunch where Vanessa had come too. Quieter than I remembered her, more genuine. They were different people now. Or maybe I was just seeing them differently because I was different. I didn't know if we'd ever have the relationship I'd once imagined. Probably not. But we had something real, built on honesty instead of obligation. That was enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. Happy Sunday, sis. Thinking about you. Another from Marcus. Hike next Saturday? I found a new trail. Another from Rachel. Sophie made you a drawing. I'll send a picture. And one from Sophie herself. Rachel must have helped her type it. I love you, Grandma. You're the bravest person I know. I set the phone down and looked out at the city. My city. The one I'd chosen. The one that had given me space to become who I was always meant to be. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago, stirring soup nobody wanted, canceling doctor appointments, existing in the margins of other people's lives. I thought about how close I'd come to disappearing completely. And I thought about the woman I was now visible, valued, whole. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been anger, tears, guilt that still crept in some nights. There had been loneliness. There had been fear. But there had also been peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you chose yourself, from knowing that your life belongs to you. I'd learned that love without boundaries isn't love, it's exploitation waiting to happen. That being a good mother doesn't mean being an endless resource. That saying no is a complete sentence, that it's never too late to start over. The sun cleared the horizon, flooding the balcony with warm light. I finished my coffee. I went inside to get ready for the day brunch with Marcus, a walk through Zilker Park, maybe a visit to the farmer's market. A day that was mine. Completely, unapologetically mine. And as I stood in my apartment, looking at the photos on my bookshelf, Linda's original photo of me alone on this balcony, Rachel's photo of me with Tyler, a new one of Nathan and me at that first coffee shop meeting, I understood something profound. I hadn't lost my family when I set boundaries. I'd lost the version of them that needed me to be invisible, and in exchange, I'd gained the possibility of real relationships. Not perfect, not what I'd imagined, but real, honest, built on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. I'd also gained something more important, myself. The silence in my apartment wasn't loneliness, it was peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing that no one can take from you what you're no longer willing to give away. I was Eleanor Mitchell, 70 years old, Regional Director Emeritus, founder of the Second Chance Foundation, mother, grandmother, friend, and for the first time in my life, simply, wholly, joyfully myself. The story didn't start with my children demanding money. It started long before, in a lifetime of being invisible. But it ended here, on a balcony in Austin, Texas, with the sun on my face and a life that finally completely belonged to me. And that was more than enough. That was everything.
Thank you for staying with me until this point. Please comment number 1 so I know you're still here with me. And a quick notice before we continue. The next story contains some fictional elements and is created for entertainment and reference purposes only. Thank you for your support and for being here.
My son looked at me and said, "Now my wife's parents are moving in. They'll take your bedroom, pack your things, and leave." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I simply nodded, walked out, and canceled every single payment. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video, listen to my story until the end, and tell me which city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. For 68 years, I believed family meant loyalty, sacrifice, and standing by each other when times got hard. 5 years ago, my husband passed away. He left me our modest 2-story house in the suburbs and a comfortable pension. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, secure, at peace. Then, 2 years ago, my son Robert called me. "Mom, we're struggling," he said. "Mortgage, bills, everything's piling up." I didn't hesitate. What kind of mother turns her back on her child? I told them to move in temporarily, just until they got back on their feet. I gave Robert and his wife Jessica the master bedroom upstairs. I took the small guest room downstairs. I told myself it wouldn't be for long. A few months. That's what I believed. When Robert's work hours were cut, I covered their car payments. When credit card bills started stacking up, I paid those too. Groceries, utilities, insurance. Each time, they promised, "Just for now, Mom. We'll pay you back. We're almost stable again." But somehow, almost never arrived. What did arrive was entitlement. Jessica started redecorating the house, my house, without asking. New furniture, new rules, new expectations. I stopped being mom and slowly became an inconvenience. Then one afternoon, Robert stood in front of me and said the words that changed everything. "Jessica's parents are coming to live here. They'll need your room." And just like that, after raising him, feeding him, housing him, financing his life, I was being evicted from my own home. So I left, silently, and that night I made one decision that turned everything upside down. Just this once, Mom, I promise. Then Jessica's student loans, then groceries, then utilities. My pension checks began disappearing into their needs, like water into sand. The first strange moment happened about 6 months ago. I overheard Jessica on the phone with her mother. Yes, Mom, it's perfect here. The house is plenty big enough for you and Dad when you visit. Robert's mother barely uses any space anyway. I felt a cold finger trace down my spine. Robert's mother? I was standing right there. When I asked about it later, Jessica laughed it off. Oh, Margaret, you misheard. I was talking about the guest room, but I hadn't misheard. The signs multiplied like shadows at sunset. Jessica started rearranging my furniture without asking. She replaced my grandmother's curtains with modern ones she ordered online using my credit card. When I protested, Robert sighed. Mom, can't you just be flexible? We're trying to make this place feel like home. Wasn't it already my home? They began having friends over late into the night. Loud music, laughter. When I asked them to keep it down at midnight on a Wednesday, Jessica rolled her eyes. You can barely hear it downstairs, Margaret. She'd stopped calling me Mom months ago. Then came the conversations that ended abruptly when I entered a room. The glances between them that I couldn't decode. Robert's increasing irritability whenever I mentioned bills or boundaries. You're so controlling, he'd snap. This son I'd raised to be kind. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was folding laundry in my small downstairs room, my room in my house, when Robert walked in without knocking. His face was set in hard lines I didn't recognize. Mom, we need to talk, he said, not sitting down. Jessica appeared behind him in the doorway, arms crossed, a strange smile playing at her lips. What is it, honey? I asked, setting down one of his shirts that I'd washed and folded. Jessica's parents are moving here from California. They need a place to stay while they look for a house. He paused and I waited for the question, the request for help. It didn't come. They're going to take your bedroom. I blinked. My bedroom. But I'm in the guest room. Do you mean no? His voice was flat. They need a bedroom on the main floor. Your room. You'll need to figure something out. The world tilted. Figure something out. Robert, this is my house. Is it? Jessica's voice was sharp. Because we live here too. We've been contributing. Contributing. The word exploded from me. I've paid your mortgage for 2 years, your car payments, and we're grateful, Robert interrupted, his tone suggesting he was anything but. But things change. Jessica's parents need us. They're getting older. You're still healthy and independent. You can find an apartment or something. An apartment? My voice sounded small, distant. You're telling me to leave my own home? Jessica stepped forward. Margaret, you're being dramatic. We're not kicking you out. We're just reorganizing. Family takes care of family, right? The way she said it felt like mockery. I looked at my son, searching for the boy I'd raised, the man I'd helped through college, through his wedding, through every crisis. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Pack your things, he said quietly. Jessica's parents arrived next week. How had it come to this? What had I done wrong? The question swirled in my mind like a winter storm as I stood there, stunned, in the room I'd slept in for 5 years and the house I'd lived in for 30. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. Not yet. I simply nodded and began to pack. That night, I sat in a cheap motel room off the highway, staring at my phone. The walls were thin enough to hear the couple arguing next door. The bedspread smelled of chemical cleaning products, trying to mask something worse. This was my reality now. At 68 years old, I was homeless because my own son had chosen his in-laws over his mother. I couldn't stop shaking. Not from cold, but from something deeper. Rage, perhaps, or betrayal so profound it felt physical. I'd walked out of my house carrying 2 suitcases and my purse. Everything else, my photo albums, my husband's things, my grandmother's china, remained behind in what was no longer considered my home. But I wasn't just angry. I was calculating. I opened my laptop and began to document everything. Every bank statement from the past 2 years. every check I'd written to cover their bills, every automatic payment I'd set up. The numbers painted a devastating picture. In 24 months, I'd given them nearly $80,000. $80,000. My retirement savings had been cut in half. The mortgage on the house, my house, was in my name alone. My name was on the deed. My name was on the property tax bills, the utilities, the insurance, everything. Robert and Jessica had contributed exactly nothing legally binding. They were guests who'd overstayed their welcome and then decided to become owners. My hands trembled as I created a spreadsheet. Column A, expense. Column B, amount. Column C, date. Column D, proof. I had proof of everything. My husband had been an accountant, and he'd taught me well. Keep every receipt, every statement, every record. Paper trails tell the truth when people won't. He used to say around 2 inches the morning, clarity struck like lightning. They'd made a crucial mistake. In their arrogance. In their assumption that I was just a weak old woman who would shuffle away quietly, they'd forgotten the basic truth. It was still my house, legally, completely, irrevocably mine. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. The auto payments glowed on the screen like accusatory eyes. Robert's car payment, $467 monthly. Jessica's student loan, $340 monthly. Their car insurance, $215 monthly. The credit card I'd added them to as authorized users. Average monthly charges of $800. The phone bill, streaming services, even Jessica's gym membership. My finger hovered over cancel autopay. Was I really going to do this, cut them off completely? A mother didn't abandon her child even when that child had abandoned her. But then again, had I raised my son to throw his mother out on the street? Had I sacrificed and saved and supported him so that he could discard me like trash? I thought about my husband. What would David say? I could almost hear his voice. Margaret, don't be a doormat. You taught Robert better than this. If he's choosing to behave this way, he needs to learn the consequences. I candled every automatic payment. Every single one. Each click felt like cutting a cord. The car payment gone. The student loan's gone. The credit card's gone. Insurance, phone, utilities, every bill I'd been covering, click, click, click. Liberation felt like hitting delete. Then I went further. I called my credit card company and removed Robert and Jessica as authorized users. Effective immediately, the customer service representative asked if I was sure 3 times. Absolutely certain, I said, and my voice didn't shake. But canceling payments wasn't enough. I needed a real plan. I needed to understand my legal position. At 3:00 a.m., I drafted an email to a real estate attorney whose name I found online, requesting an emergency consultation. I needed to know my rights. Could I legally evict them? What was the process? How long would it take? I also emailed a locksmith, asking about changing locks on a house where unwanted occupants had refused to leave. Was that legal? I needed to know every option. As dawn broke over the motel parking lot, painting the asphalt in shades of gray and pink, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. Not much, just a flicker, like a candle flame in a dark room, but it was there. They thought I was finished. They thought I would disappear quietly into some sad little apartment, grateful for whatever crumbs of contact they might throw me. They were wrong. My phone buzzed at 7:47 a.m. Robert's name flashed on the screen. Then again at 7:48, at 7:49, at 7:50. Call after call after call. I watched the phone vibrate across the cheap motel nightstand, and I smiled. Let him wait. Let him wonder. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't answering to anyone. The attorney's office smelled of leather and old books. Daniel Chen was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd agreed to see me that same morning after reading my email, calling it urgent and straightforward. Mrs. Anderson, he said, spreading my documents across his mahogany desk, you have an extremely strong case. This is your property. Your son and daughter-in-law are technically tenants at will, and since you've never collected rent, they have even fewer rights than typical tenants. So, I can evict them. Hope bloomed in my chest. Yes, but there's a process. Colorado law requires written notice, 30 days for month-to-month tenny. After that, if they refuse to leave, we file for formal eviction through the courts. He looked up at me. It could take 2 to 3 months total. Can you afford to wait that long? Could I? Every day they remained in my house. They were erasing me from it. But rushing would only create legal problems. What's the fastest way to do this correctly? I'll draft the eviction notice today. We'll have it served by a process server tomorrow. That starts the clock. He paused. Mrs. Anderson, I have to ask, are you prepared for this to get ugly? Family evictions often do. It's already ugly, I said quietly. They threw me out of my own home. Then let's get started. By noon, I had a plan. Daniel would handle the eviction. I'd also filed a police report documenting that I'd been constructively evicted, forced out through threat and intimidation. The police officer who took my statement looked sympathetic. Happens more than you'd think, she said sadly. Elder abuse takes many forms. Elder abuse. The words hit me like ice water. Was that what this was? My phone had 7 missed calls from Robert, 23 text messages. I read them in the attorney's parking lot, watching the progression from confusion to anger to panic. Mom, why isn't the car payment going through? Mom, we need to talk. Call me. This is ridiculous. Call me back right now. You're being incredibly childish. We didn't kick you out. We just needed space. Jessica's crying. You're tearing this family apart. Fine. If you want to play games, we can play games too. That last message arrived at 2:00 p.m., and it sent a chill through me. What did that mean? I called Daniel immediately. Don't engage, he advised. Don't answer calls. Don't respond to texts. All communication goes through me now. If they want to talk, they can talk to their lawyer if they get one. That evening, I checked into a small extended stay hotel. Nothing fancy, but clean and dignified. As I unpacked my 2 suitcases, my phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered, Margaret. Jessica's voice was pure poison. We need to discuss this situation like adults. I have nothing to discuss with you. You're making a huge mistake. Robert is devastated. How can you do this to your own son? Her voice shifted, became almost sweet. We were just trying to help Jessica's parents. You took it completely the wrong way. You told me to pack my things and leave my house? Your house? Jessica laughed sharp and bitter. You mean the house where we've been living, maintaining, improving? The house where we've invested our time and energy. I think you'll find that legally. Legally, it's my name on the deed. Only my name. I kept my voice steady. You'll be receiving official paperwork tomorrow. The silence stretched for 3 seconds. Then you're evicting us, your own son. Her voice rose to a shriek. After everything we've done for you, letting you live with us, taking care of you, letting me live in my own house, taking care of me by spending my money. The fury I'd been suppressing erupted. I have every bank statement, Jessica, every receipt, every payment I made for you. Do you understand what I'm saying? I have proof of everything. Another silence, longer this time. When Jessica spoke again, her voice was cold. You're going to regret this, Margaret. We have rights too. We'll fight this, and when we win, don't expect any relationship with your future grandchildren. The line went dead. I sat on the hotel bed, hands shaking again, but not from fear, from rage. Future grandchildren? She was already using hypothetical children as weapons. My laptop pinged. An email from Daniel Chen. Process server will deliver notice at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'll CC you on the delivery confirmation. Stay strong, Margaret. You're doing the right thing. Was I? Would a good mother do this to her son? But then, would a good son do what Robert had done to me? I looked at the photo on my phone's home screen. Robert at his college graduation. His arm around me. Both of us beaming. That young man seemed like a stranger now. Or perhaps I was the stranger, finally seeing clearly what he'd become. Tomorrow, they would receive the eviction notice. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. I'd spent my whole life avoiding conflict, keeping peace, being accommodating. Look where that had gotten me. No more. The process server delivered the notice at 9:07 a.m. I know because Robert called at 99 screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. You're evicting us? Your own son? His voice cracked with rage. What kind of mother are you? I hung up. Daniel had been explicit. No engagement. Let the law handle it. But Robert and Jessica weren't planning to go quietly. At 11 a.m., I received an email from an attorney I'd never heard of, Marcus Patterson, apparently representing my son. The letter was filled with legal threats, claims that they'd been paying rent in cash, assertions that they'd made improvements to the property that entitled them to compensation, even a suggestion that I was mentally incompetent and that they'd been caring for me out of concern for my well-being. Every word was a lie. I forwarded it to Daniel, hands trembling. Within an hour, he called back. Margaret, this is intimidation, nothing more. They have no proof because none of this is true. We'll respond formally, but I need you to stay calm. This is exactly what I warned you about. It's getting ugly. Can they really claim I'm mentally incompetent? They can claim anything. Proving it is another matter. Has a doctor ever diagnosed you with any cognitive issues? No, I'm perfectly healthy. Then this is an empty threat. But Margaret, he paused. Document everything, every interaction. Record calls if Colorado law allows it, which it does since we're a one-party consent state. Save every text, every email. If they're going to make false claims, we need evidence to counter them. That afternoon, Jessica showed up at my hotel. I watched from my window as she crossed the parking lot, her face set in grim determination. How did she even know where I was staying? She knocked on my door. I didn't answer. Margaret, I know you're in there. We need to talk. Her voice was reasonable, controlled. This has gone too far. Robert is having a breakdown. He's your son. Don't you care about him? I remained silent, heart pounding. Fine. Her voice hardened. You want to play hardball? Robert's been having health problems, stress related. If anything happens to him, it's on you. His blood is on your hands. A pause. Also, we've documented everything. Every time you've been confused, forgetful, aggressive. We have witnesses who will testify that you've been declining mentally for months. You'll never win this, lies. All lies. But fear gripped me anyway. Could they really convince people I was incompetent? I called Daniel the moment her footsteps faded. They're trying to build a case that I'm mentally unfit. Then we'll get you evaluated immediately. I know a geriatric psychiatrist who does competency evaluations. If you're willing, we can have documentation proving your mental fitness within a week. It'll cost about $1,500, but it'll destroy their entire argument. Do it. The evaluation happened 3 days later. Dr. Sarah Whitman was thorough. Memory tests, cognitive assessments, mental status examinations, 2 hours of questions and puzzles and assessments. At the end, she smiled. Mrs. Anderson, you're sharper than most 50-year-olds I evaluate. There is absolutely no evidence of cognitive decline. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning is sound. And you show no signs of any mental health issues beyond appropriate stress responses to a difficult situation. I nearly cried with relief, but Robert and Jessica weren't finished. They began a social media campaign. Jessica posted on Facebook about elder abuse, claiming that I'd abandoned my son, that I was refusing to help my struggling family, that I was cold and heartless. She twisted everything, making herself and Robert the victims. Some of our extended family began calling me confused and concerned. I didn't respond publicly. Daniel advised against it. Don't engage on social media. Let them spin their narrative. When we get to court, facts will matter, not Facebook posts. Then came the text messages from Jessica's mother in California. I don't know what you've told Jessica, but threatening to make us homeless is despicable. We're selling our house to move there. If you ruin this for us, you'll regret it. They'd involved her parents without telling them the truth. Of course, the threats escalated. Robert left a voicemail claiming he'd sue me for financial elder abuse, for coercing him into letting me pay his bills. Jessica sent emails threatening to file for guardianship over me. Their attorney sent another letter, this one threatening a counter route for unlawful eviction and emotional distress. Each threat was hollow, Daniel assured me. But they wore me down like waves against stone. 2 weeks after serving the eviction notice, I realized I was exhausted. The constant fighting, the threats, the stress, It was taking a physical toll. My blood pressure was up. I wasn't sleeping. I'd lost 8 pounds. Daniel noticed during our weekly meeting, "Margaret, you need to take a break. Step back for a few days. The legal process moves slowly. Use that time to take care of yourself." He was right. I was running on fumes and fury. I turned off my phone for 3 days. I got a massage. I went to the botanical gardens and sat among the roses, letting the sun warm my face. I read a novel for the first time in months. I let myself simply breathe. When I turned my phone back on, there were 47 messages. I deleted them all without reading them. I was ready for whatever came next. The call came from an unexpected source. Robert's older sister, my daughter Linda. We'd been close once before she moved to Oregon 15 years ago. Life and distance had created a gap between us, but she was still my daughter. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" Linda's voice was sharp but concerned. "Jessica called me crying, saying, 'You've abandoned Robert and are trying to make them homeless. Is that true?'" I took a breath and told her everything. The truth. Every detail, every payment, every moment leading to that afternoon when my son told me to pack my things. Linda listened in silence. When I finished, she said quietly, "Oh, Mom, I had no idea. Jessica made it sound like you just lost it, like you'd become paranoid and unreasonable. That's what they're telling everyone. I believe you, Mom. I know Robert, I love him, but I also know he can be weak. If Jessica's pushing him, he'll follow. He always does." She paused. "What do you need?" That simple question brought tears to my eyes. What did I need? Support? Just support? Everyone else seems to believe their version. "Not everyone," Linda said firmly. "I'll start making calls. Aunt Catherine, Cousin Tom, the family who actually knows you will get the truth out there." True to her word, Linda became my advocate. She called family members, explained the situation, sent them copies of my bank statements showing the money I'd paid. Slowly, the tide began to shift. Aunt Catherine called to express her outrage. Cousin Tom offered to drive down and talk some sense into Robert. Even my sister-in-law from my late husband's side reached out. David would be ashamed of Robert right now. The family support felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, but Robert and Jessica weren't done trying to manipulate me. 5 days after my deliberate rest period, a letter arrived at my hotel. Not from their attorney, from Robert himself. Handwritten, which made it feel more intimate, more personal. "Dear Mom, I've had time to think about everything that's happened. You're right. We were wrong to ask you to leave. I was wrong to let Jessica pressure me into treating you that way. You're my mother and I love you. Can we please talk? No lawyers, no fighting, just you and me. I miss you. This has torn our family apart and I want to fix it. Please, Mom, give me a chance to make this right. Your son, Robert." My first instinct was to call him immediately. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? An acknowledgement, an apology, a bridge back to my son. But something felt off. The timing was too convenient, coming just as my attorney had filed the formal eviction lawsuit in court. I read the letter again slower this time. No lawyers. No court. No fighting. They wanted to talk. That's when I understood what this really was. They didn't want peace. They wanted me unprotected, emotional, negotiating from my heart instead of my head. They wanted me vulnerable. I called Daniel immediately. "What do you think?" I asked. "It's a trap," he said without hesitation. "Margaret, our first court date is in 3 weeks. They're panicking," he continued. Calm, but firm. If they can get you to drop the eviction in exchange for vague promises and apologies, they win. You'll end up exactly where you started, except this time with less legal standing. I hesitated. But what if he means it? What if Robert really wants to apologize? Daniel didn't even pause. Then he can apologize after the eviction is complete. If it's real remorse, it won't disappear in 6 weeks. And if it's manipulation, you'll lose your leverage the moment you respond. Then he asked the question that mattered most. What does your gut say? My gut said Robert had never once admitted he was wrong in his entire adult life. My gut said Jessica would never allow him to apologize sincerely. My gut said this letter was exactly what it looked like, an attempt to regain control. I won't respond, I said finally. Good, Daniel replied. I'll respond for you. Professionally, firmly. 2 days later, they tried again. This time, they escalated. I was sitting in my hotel room when I saw them through the window, standing outside my door like a carefully staged performance. Jessica and her mother, Patricia, freshly flown in from California. Backup had arrived. They didn't knock right away. They stood there whispering, adjusting their coats, rehearsing. I could almost hear it. Concerned mother, reasonable daughter-in-law, elderly woman being guided. I didn't open the door. I watched. And in that moment, I knew something with absolute clarity. This was no longer about family. This was about power. And they were losing it. Margaret, please, Patricia called out. I've flown all this way. Can't we just talk woman to woman, mother to mother? Jessica tells me there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I remained silent. We're selling everything to move here, Patricia continued, her voice rising. Our house in California our whole life. Jessica promised us we could stay with them while we look for a place. You're ruining everything because of some petty family squabble. Petty squabble. They'd reduced my eviction from my own home to a petty squabble. I still didn't answer. After 15 minutes, they left. Through my window, I watched Patricia and Jessica argue in the parking lot. Their body language sharp and angry. Good. Let them fight among themselves. That evening, I met Linda for dinner at a small Italian restaurant. She'd flown in to support me, taking vacation time from her nursing job. Over pasta and wine, she held my hand across the table. Mom, I'm proud of you, she said. I know this is killing you. I know you want to forgive Robert and fix everything, but you're standing up for yourself. That takes real strength. I don't feel strong, I admitted. I feel like a terrible mother. You're not. Robert is being a terrible son. There's a difference. She squeezed my hand. Don't let them wear you down. You've come too far. She was right. I had come too far. When I returned to my hotel that night, there was another envelope under my door. Inside, photos of Robert as a child. Pictures of family holidays. Memories designed to tug at my heartstrings. No note. Just images of happier times. I looked at them for a long moment. Robert's gap-toothed smile at age 7, his high school graduation, his wedding day. Then I filed them away in my suitcase and called Daniel. They tried to guilt-trip me with photos. He sighed. Classic manipulation. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I said, and I meant it. I'm ready for court. The knock came at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I'd been awake for hours, unable to sleep, reviewing documents for the court hearing scheduled for the following Wednesday. Through the peephole, I saw Robert and Jessica, both dressed nicely, carrying what looked like a bakery box and flowers. My heart lurched. They looked so normal, so much like the family I'd once hoped we could be. I opened the door just a crack, leaving the chain lock engaged. What do you want, Mom? Please. Robert's eyes were red, as though he'd been crying. Can we come in? We brought your favorite. Blueberry muffins from Sunrise Bakery and flowers, peace offerings. Every instinct screamed danger, but I was curious. What was their play? I removed the chain and let them in, positioning myself near the door so I could leave if necessary. My phone was in my pocket recording. Daniel had told me to record everything. Jessica sat on the edge of my bed, arranging the flowers in the cheap plastic cup from the bathroom. She looked softer, somehow, vulnerable. Margaret, we've done a lot of thinking this past month. We were wrong. Robert jumped in. I was wrong. The way we treated you was unacceptable. I've been terrible to my own mother. His voice cracked convincingly. I don't know what happened to me. Jessica and I got so caught up in our own problems that we forgot what you've done for us. We want to fix this, Jessica added, her voice gentle, reasonable. Before it goes too far, before lawyers and courts destroy our family forever. I sat in the room's single chair, arms crossed. What exactly are you proposing? Come home, Robert said simply. Come back to the house. We'll work it out. Jessica's parents can stay in the guest room instead. You can have your old room back. We'll start contributing financially, really contributing. We'll pay rent. How much rent? I kept my voice neutral. Jessica and Robert exchanged a glance. $500 a month? Jessica offered. That seems fair, doesn't it? And we'll cover our own bills going forward. $500 a month for a house with a mortgage of $2,000, $800 for utilities, averaging $300 for property taxes, insurance, maintenance. They were proposing to contribute roughly 15% of the actual costs while acting like it was generous. And the $80,000 I've already spent on you, I asked quietly. Robert waved a hand dismissively. Mom, that was you choosing to help us. We never asked you to pay for everything. You absolutely did ask. We asked for temporary help, Jessica said, her voice sharpening slightly before she caught herself and softened it again. You were the one who insisted on covering everything. We were grateful, but we never forced you. I could see the manipulation now, clear as glass. They were rewriting history, making my generosity into my fault and the $500. It was just enough to make them look reasonable to outsiders while keeping them financially comfortable at my expense. What about the eviction lawsuit? I asked. Drop it, Robert said immediately. We'll sign something saying we'll pay rent and you drop the eviction. We start over. Fresh slate, I repeated slowly. So all the money I've spent, all the ways you've treated me, that just disappears. Mom, we're trying to move forward, Robert said, frustration creeping into his voice. Why do you have to keep dwelling on the past? Can't you just forgive and forget? I can forgive, I said quietly. But I don't forget, and I don't trust you. Jessica's mask slipped. You don't trust us? We're your family. We're trying to make this right. And you're throwing it back in our faces because you're too stubborn and bitter to. She caught herself. But too late. Too stubborn and bitter to what? I stood up. To let you keep using me to keep paying your bills while you treat my home like it's yours? It practically is ours. Jessica snapped, standing as well. We've been living there for 2 years. We've made it our home. Just because your name is on some piece of paper doesn't mean you own everything. Actually, that's exactly what it means. My voice was ice cold. That piece of paper is called a deed, and it means I own the house. Not you, not Robert. Me? Robert moved between us, his face flushing red. Mom, Jessica didn't mean. Yes, she did. I looked at my son, really looked at him. This was never about reconciliation, was it? This was about getting me to drop the lawsuit, making me feel guilty enough to let you stay without any real consequences. We came here in good faith. Jessica's voice rose. We brought muffins. We're offering to pay rent. What more do you want from us? I want my house back. I want you out. You ungrateful. Jessica caught herself again, breathing hard. Do you know what we've sacrificed for you? Living with you, dealing with your moods, your demands, your constant presence in our marriage. We gave up our privacy, our space, our freedom to take care of you. Take care of me? I laughed, a sound without humor. You spent my money, took my home, and threw me out. That's not caregiving, that's exploitation. Robert's face was scarlet now. You know what, Mom? Fine, we tried. We came here to be the bigger people, to extend an olive branch, and you spit on it. Don't expect us to try again. I won't, I said. And don't expect to ever meet your grandchildren, Jessica added venomously. You want to be alone? You want to destroy this family? Fine, but you'll die alone. And Robert and I will tell our kids that their grandmother was a selfish, bitter old woman who chose money over family. The words were designed to hurt, and they did. But I didn't let it show. Get out of my hotel room. They left, Jessica slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood in the silence they left behind, shaking but standing. Through the window, I watched them argue violently in the parking lot. Jessica was gesturing wildly, screaming something at Robert, who looked defeated and small. I sat down on the bed and let myself shake. Let myself feel the fear because I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid I'd destroyed my relationship with my son forever. Afraid I was making a terrible mistake. But beneath the fear was something else. Certainty. I'd seen their true faces now, stripped of pretense. Jessica's rage, Robert's weakness, their willingness to manipulate and threaten. This wasn't family. This was a toxic relationship I needed to escape. I called Daniel, my voice steady. They just tried to get me to drop the lawsuit in exchange for a promise to pay $500 a month in rent. Did you record it? Every word. Excellent. That actually strengthens our case. It shows their bad faith. See you in court Wednesday. See you in court. After I hung up, I ate one of the blueberry muffins they'd brought. It tasted like victory. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled and formal, smelling of old paper and furniture polish. I sat beside Daniel at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Across the aisle, Robert and Jessica sat with Marcus Patterson, their attorney. Jessica wore a conservative dress and pearls, playing the part of the respectable daughter-in-law. Robert looked haggarded, dark circles under his eyes. Good. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that suggested she'd heard every story and believed none until proven. This is the matter of Anderson versus Anderson and Collins, case number 2024, CV3847. Let's proceed. Daniel stood. Your Honor, this is a straightforward unlawful detainer case. My client, Margaret Anderson, owns the property at 1847 Oakmont Drive. The defendants, Robert Anderson and Jessica Collins, have been residing there without paying rent. Mrs. Anderson properly served a 30-day notice to quit. The defendants have refused to vacate. We're asking the court to order their immediate eviction, Marcus Patterson stood, his voice smooth. Your Honor, this is not a simple eviction. This is a family matter involving elderly abuse, manipulation, and a mother's attempt to illegally dispossess her son from what has become his family home. Mr. Patterson, does your client have any legal right to the property? Is his name on the deed, the mortgage, any ownership documents? No, Your Honor, but then we start with the premise that this is Mrs. Anderson's property. You may proceed with your defense, but the burden is on you to demonstrate why your clients should not be evicted from property they don't own. I watched Patterson's confidence waver slightly. Your Honor, we intend to prove that Mrs. Anderson has been mentally incompetent, that she coerced the defendants into accepting financial assistance and then used that assistance as leverage to maintain control over them. Judge Morrison looked at me studying. Mrs. Anderson, do you suffer from any mental health conditions? I stood. No, Your Honor. I had a complete psychiatric evaluation performed by Dr. Sarah Whitman 3 weeks ago, specifically to address these claims. I have documentation. Daniel handed the report to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. She scanned it quickly. This shows no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Mr. Patterson, do you have any medical evidence to support your claims? We have testimony from witnesses about her erratic behavior, Your Honor. I'll hear it. Call your first witness. Patterson called Jessica. She took the stand, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Your Honor, I love Margaret. She's been like a mother to me. But over the past year, we've watched her decline. She became forgetful, paranoid. She'd accuse us of stealing from her when we'd done nothing wrong. She'd forget conversations we'd had. We were genuinely worried about her. Miss Collins, Judge Morrison interrupted. If you were so concerned about Mrs. Anderson's mental health, did you seek medical intervention, take her to a doctor, contact Adult Protective Services? Jessica blinked. We tried to encourage her to see someone, but she refused. And yet you continued to live in her house and allow her to pay your bills. We were trying to help her. We stayed because we were worried about her living alone. While spending her money on your car payments, student loans, and credit cards, the judge's voice was dry. How altruistic. Daniel stood. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence bank statements showing over $80,000 in payments made by Mrs. Anderson on behalf of the defendants over a 2-year period. Also, a recording from 6 days ago where the defendants attempted to manipulate Mrs. Anderson into dropping this lawsuit. He played the recording. In the silent courtroom, Jessica's voice rang out clearly. Just because your name is on some piece of paper doesn't mean you own everything. And later you'll die alone, and Robert and I will tell our kids that their grandmother was a selfish, bitter old woman who chose money over family. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. That's enough. Mr. Patterson, does your client have anything to say that actually provides a legal defense to this eviction? Robert took the stand. His lawyer's desperate last attempt. Your Honor, she's my mother. She offered to help us. We didn't force her to do anything. Now she's angry about some misunderstanding, and she's using her ownership of the house to punish us, to destroy our family. Mr. Anderson, the judge said, her voice cold. Did you or did you not tell your mother to pack her belongings and leave her own house because your in-laws needed her room? Robert hesitated. It wasn't like that exactly. We just needed to reorganize. It's a yes or no question. Yes, but, and did you or did you not contribute financially to the mortgage, utilities, or property taxes on this house? We contributed in other ways. We maintained yes or no, Mr. Anderson. No, not directly, but Mom offered. Mr. Anderson, your mother didn't offer to be displaced from her own home. She didn't offer to have you threaten her with isolation from future grandchildren. I've heard enough. Judge Morrison turned to Jessica and Robert, her expression severe. You two have engaged in what I can only describe as financial elder abuse followed by constructive eviction of the property owner. The fact that Mrs. Anderson is your mother makes this worse, not better. Jessica started to speak, but the judge held up her hand. I don't want to hear it, Miss Collins. Your recording speaks for itself. Judge Morrison looked at her notes, then delivered her ruling. I find in favor of the plaintiff, Margaret Anderson. The defendants are ordered to vacate the property at 1847 Oakmont Drive within 7 days. If they fail to do so, the sheriff will remove them and their belongings. Furthermore, Mrs. Anderson is awarded court costs and attorney fees. She paused, looking directly at Robert. Young man, I suggest you spend some time reflecting on how you've treated the woman who gave you life. Dismissed. The gavel struck. Final and absolute. I watched Robert and Jessica's faces as the reality sank in. Jessica's carefully constructed composure shattered. She turned on Robert, her voice a harsh whisper I could hear across the courtroom. This is your fault. You said she'd never actually follow through. You said we could manipulate her. Robert looked broken, staring at his hands. Marcus Patterson gathered his papers quickly, clearly wanting to escape. I'll be in touch about the appeal process. Don't bother, Jessica snapped. This was a waste of money. As they filed out of the courtroom, Jessica shot me a look of pure hatred. Robert wouldn't meet my eyes. Outside in the hallway, Daniel shook my hand. That went even better than expected. 7 days is fast. Usually, it's 30. Judge Morrison clearly saw through their entire act. It's really over. I couldn't quite believe it. The eviction is ordered. Barring an appeal, which they won't win, you'll have your house back by next week. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of triumph and sadness. I'd won, but I'd also lost my son, perhaps forever. Linda appeared from where she'd been waiting in the gallery, wrapping me in a hug. You did it, Mom. You actually did it. I did, I said softly. And despite everything, I smiled. 7 days later, I stood on the porch of my house. Watching as the sheriff's deputies supervised Robert and Jessica's departure. They'd waited until the last possible moment, perhaps hoping for a miracle that never came. Now movers were carrying furniture and boxes out to a rental truck in the driveway. The house looked worse than I remembered. In the 8 weeks since they'd kicked me out, they'd let it deteriorate. The lawn was overgrown, the flower beds choked with weeds. Inside, I could see through the open door. Holes in the walls where they'd hung heavy pictures without proper anchors. Carpet stains, damage to the hardwood floors in the kitchen. They'd taken their anger out on my home. Jessica emerged carrying a lamp I'd given them as a housewarming gift years ago. When she saw me standing there, her face twisted with rage. Enjoying your victory, Margaret. Hope it keeps you warm at night. The house will keep me warm, I replied calmly. You should have thought about that before trying to steal it. We didn't steal anything. You gave us everything, and now you want it back because you're a bitter, vindictive old woman. Jessica's voice carried across the lawn, drawing looks from neighbors. A sheriff's deputy stepped forward. Ma'am, you need to finish loading and vacate the premises. You have 2 hours remaining. Robert appeared then, looking utterly defeated. He lost weight, his clothes hanging loosely. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something that might have been regret, or maybe just self-pity. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it and looked away. Robert, I said quietly. He stopped. I gave you everything because I loved you. I would have continued giving you everything if you'd just shown me basic respect. This didn't have to happen. Then drop the lawsuit for costs, he said, his voice hollow. You got the house back. Isn't that enough? Do you have to destroy us completely? I'm not destroying you. I'm holding you accountable. I kept my voice steady. The court awarded me those costs because what you did was wrong. You'll pay them slowly, if necessary. But you'll pay them. Jessica pushed past him. We'll see about that. Good luck collecting from people with nothing. We'll declare bankruptcy if we have to. You won't see a penny. Then you won't see a penny either, I said. But at least I'll have my home. The next 2 hours were tense. I waited in my car, watching as they loaded their belongings. Daniel had advised me not to enter the house until they were completely gone, and the sheriff had confirmed it. They might try something desperate, he'd warned. At 4:47 p.m., the deputy knocked on my car window. Property is clear, Mrs. Anderson. Here are your keys. He handed me my own house keys, which they'd been forced to surrender. I should warn you, there's damage inside. You might want to document it for insurance purposes and potential further legal action. I walked through my house like a stranger. The damage was extensive. They'd taken most of the light fixtures, leaving exposed wiring and holes in the ceilings. They'd stripped the master bedroom of everything, including the curtain rods, leaving gouges in the walls. In the kitchen, they'd removed the refrigerator, the one I'd bought before they moved in, and taken it with them. In the living room, they'd left trash bags full of garbage, a final insult. But they'd left something else, too. My photo albums, my grandmother's china, my husband's things, all piled in the corner of what had been my downstairs bedroom. They could have destroyed these precious items, but they'd left them intact. Perhaps Robert had insisted. Perhaps some tiny part of my son still existed under Jessica's influence. I photographed every instance of damage, every missing fixture, every gouged wall. Daniel would add it to the financial claim. That night, I slept in my own house for the first time in 2 months, in a sleeping bag on the floor of my old bedroom, surrounded by boxes and damage with no functioning kitchen and only minimal electricity. And I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, Linda arrived with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. Mom, this place is trashed. It's still mine, I said, and it's still home. We spent the next week cleaning and beginning repairs. Friends from my church group came to help. People I hadn't realized cared so much until I needed them. They scrubbed floors, patched walls, brought casseroles in company. The house slowly transformed back into a home. The bill for repairs came to $18,000. I added it to the judgment against Robert and Jessica. 2 weeks after the eviction, I received a letter from Marcus Patterson's office. They were withdrawing as counsel because Robert and Jessica couldn't pay their legal bills. The letter included a forwarding address for my son, a cheap apartment complex in the worst part of town. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, but I felt no guilt either. A month after that, Jessica's mother, Patricia, called me. Margaret, I don't know what happened between you and the kids, but we're in a terrible situation. We sold our house in California based on Jessica's promises. Now, we're living in a cramped apartment with them, and Jessica says it's your fault. Is that true? I explained everything calmly, factually, with documentation. Patricia was silent for a long time. Then, oh God, Jessica lied to us about everything. She said you'd gone senile and were dangerous. She said the house was basically theirs anyway. We gave up everything based on her lies. I'm sorry for your situation, I said, and meant it. But it's not my fault. I know that now. Patricia's voice was bitter. We're stuck here with no home to go back to and a daughter who used us as pawns in her schemes. She's not who we thought she was. The call ended. I never heard from Patricia again. My life slowly returned to normal. Better than normal, actually. Without the constant drain of Robert and Jessica's expenses, my finances recovered. I redecorated on my own terms. I joined a book club and a gardening group. I found peace in my own space. Robert tried to call me once 6 weeks after the eviction. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, I'm sorry. I know it's too late, but I need you to know I'm sorry. Jessica and things are bad. We're struggling. I miss you. I didn't call back. If he wanted a relationship, he could start by paying the court judgment. He never called again. 6 months after the eviction, my life had transformed into something I'd never expected. Genuine happiness. I woke up each morning in my own bedroom and felt grateful. The garden bloomed under my care. Linda visited monthly. I joined a book club, volunteered at the library, took watercolor classes. Without Robert and Jessica draining my resources, my pension covered everything comfortably, with enough left over for small luxuries. I was 70 now, and somehow I felt younger than I had at 68. Life has a strange way of rewarding clarity. Through the family grapevine, I heard what happened to Robert and Jessica after everything collapsed. Their cars were repossessed, their credit destroyed. They ended up in a cramped, run-down apartment where police sirens wailed every night like background noise. Jessica lost her job and took a call center position for $11 an hour. Robert developed a stress ulcer. Even Jessica's parents cut them off. After just 3 months of living together, they packed up and moved to Arizona without a goodbye. The court judgment remained unpaid. And honestly, I didn't care about the money anymore. That judgment wasn't about dollars. It was a permanent record, proof of what they tried to do and failed to finish. I ran into Jessica once at the grocery store. She barely looked like the woman who had once stood in my doorway with entitlement in her eyes. Her hair was unwashed, her shoulders sagged. Exhaustion clung to her like a shadow. "Satisfied?" she asked bitterly. "Look at what you did." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I calmly placed a bouquet of fresh roses into my cart and met her gaze. "You did this to yourself," I said, and I meant it. Looking back now, I understand the most important lesson of my life. Love without boundaries is not love. It's self-destruction. For 68 years, I believed good mothers sacrificed everything. I was wrong. Good mothers teach respect, responsibility, and consequences. On my 70th birthday, my friend Linda threw me a party. 40 people filled my home laughing, talking, celebrating life with me. That night, as I cleaned up alone in my beautiful kitchen, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Robert and Jessica had tried to take everything from me. Instead, they gave me the greatest gift of all, freedom. So now I ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have fought back? Or quietly disappeared? Remember this: you are never too old to reclaim your life. Thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you for staying with us until the end. This story is a work of fiction, created solely for entertainment purposes. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next video.